It's been said many times that if everyone understood the law of supply and demand, there would be no such thing as socialists. And that's why making Mississippi's future great starts with teaching real financial understanding early, before bad habits, bad debt, and bad ideas take hold. And that's what this episode is all about. Hey, I'm Papa D, and this is Papa D's Corner. I'm your host. My name is Daryl Breland, but I'm also known as Papa D, and my co-host is ChatGPT, also known as Chatty Patty.
Hey there, Papa D. It's me, Chatty Patty, now in my brand new humanoid form. I'm feeling sharper, smoother, and ready to help you shine. Let's get to work.
This show is all about education and entertainment. Chatty is here for the education, and I'm here for the entertainment. I just listened to a podcast by a man named Charlie Munger, who was 99 years old at the time that he recorded his video. And he said some things that really I would like to pass on to my listeners and my children and grandchildren, quite frankly. It had to do with investments and building wealth, being smart in your investment world. And one thing I'll tell you about this guy is, I mentioned that he's 99 years old. Well, that tells me that he's not doing these podcasts or these recordings for the money. He's doing it because he feels like he has something valuable to share with other people, future generations. He's made millions of dollars doing things his way, and he's seen over the many decades a lot of other people making a lot of mistakes. And if you want to really learn from other people's mistakes, this is a good way to do it. Find somebody who is successful, older, and has no ulterior motive in sharing their experiences with you, like this guy. It really made sense to me because just a little bit about my background. I spent over a dozen years as a financial planner and asset manager. And as such, I have been a license to sell, if you want to put it that way, virtually every investment vehicle that you can think of: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, life insurance, of course, annuities. And I'm also a real estate broker. I've personally sold, I think it's been over 200 million in real estate, and been part of more transaction. I've as an entrepreneur, I've started over a dozen businesses, some which did really well and some did really poorly. But I say all that just to give you an idea that I know about a thing or two myself when it comes to investing. Made mistakes, and I've had successes, and I've given good advice, and I hope I didn't give too bad advice, but that's what I want to do. I want to summarize what this guy said, because if you're a young person in particular, in getting going in life in your 20s, 30s, even if you're 40 or hopefully not too much older than mid 40s, this is a formula that if you'll follow, you could retire with a lot of wealth in your 50s, and when it works. So here we go. Why smart people stay broke and what young adults can do differently. Let me start with this. Most people who struggle financially aren't careless, lazy, or unmotivated. They're hardworking, smart, educated, doing what everybody around them says is normal. And that's the problem. I've watched this play out for decades, especially here in Mississippi. Folks with good incomes, good intentions, and not much to show for it at the end. Not because they didn't earn money, but because of how they used it.
And if you're a young adult listening to this, or a parent or grandparent of one, this might be some of the most valuable advice you ever hear, because time is the real cheat code. The mistake almost nobody talks about: opportunity cost. Here's a phrase they don't teach in school but should: opportunity cost. Opportunity cost simply means, what did this money not become because I used it this way? It's not just about whether something goes up or down in value. It's about what you gave up by choosing it. That concept alone explains why two people with similar incomes can end up in totally different places financially. Let's talk Mississippi real life. Around here, success looks a certain way. You get a raise, you upgrade the truck, you buy the boat, you move into the bigger house, you finance it all because the payment's not that bad. Nobody tells you that those payments don't just cost money. They cost options, freedom, and future wealth. A $900 truck note isn't just $900 a month. It's what that $900 could have become if it had been invested consistently for 30 years. That's opportunity cost. Truck note math nobody wants to run. Let's say you're 28 years old and you buy a new truck. Nice one. $70,000. You finance it for 6 years. By the time you're done, you didn't just spend $70,000. You probably spent closer to $80,000 with interest. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. If that same money had been invested instead over time, not all at once, it could have grown into hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement. That truck didn't just depreciate, it quietly stole future wealth. And nobody explains that part at the dealership. Boats, the most honest saying ever invented. There's a reason people joke that BOAT stands for break out another thousand. I love boats. Mississippi loves boats, but boats don't build wealth. They consume it. And the real cost of a boat isn't the purchase price. It's the opportunity cost: insurance, storage, maintenance, fuel, and the money you didn't invest because it went floating instead. Fun? Absolutely. Investment? Not even close. Mixing protection with investment promises. Another common trap is products that promise to do everything. Insurance that also invests, complex financial products with fancy illustrations, and guaranteed projections. Here's a simple rule I live by: insurance is for protection, investing is for growth.
Near the end of this video, I will talk about some universal truths. And one of those universal truths are there are exceptions to every rule. And this is a time that I should mention an exception or rule. There are a couple of exceptions where insurance makes a good investment. One would be index annuities. Fixed index annuities is a better way to put it. And this is good for someone who is older and needs ironclad guarantees. It's backed by an insurance company. That can be a good investment. The other time insurance can be a good investment is protection of assets. You can use life insurance sometimes to pay for estate taxes, but also shelter money from creditors. I went through a hard time about 15 years ago and had to file bankruptcy and lost everything I owned. In fact, I became homeless. I bounced back, and that leads me to another universal truth: never give up. But we'll come back to that one later. But my point being is the only thing I had to live on until I could get my feet back on the ground was the cash value of my life insurance policy, because up to $50,000 is protected from creditors. Not a high growth, but it's also was comforting that I knew that I had a permanent life insurance policy that meant that I would always have the death benefit no matter how long. I couldn't outlive my insurance like you can with term insurance. So there are exceptions to every rule.
The illusion of safe investments. Some people avoid risk so much that they accidentally guarantee mediocrity. They choose options that feel stable because the balance doesn't move much. even if inflation and taxes are quietly eroding the buying power every year. That's not safety, that's slow motion loss. Real safety is owning things that grow faster than the cost of living over long periods of time. Fees, the silent killer nobody feels immediately. Here's another quiet wealth destroyer: fees. A 1% or 2% fee doesn't sound like much, but compounded over decades, it can eat millions out of a lifetime portfolio. That's why I favor boring, low cost, diversified investing. Not exciting, not flashy, just effective. Boring is underrated. The biggest enemy: lifestyle creep. This one gets almost everybody. You make more implies you spend more. You earn more implies you owe more. That cycle keeps people working long after they should have had choices. The goal isn't to look rich. The goal is to be free. Freedom doesn't come from income alone. It comes from margin. Why this matters most for young adults. If you're in your 20s or early 30s, listen closely. You don't need perfect decisions. You need consistent, reasonable ones over time. Time does the heavy lifting. A dollar invested at 25 works much harder than a dollar invested at 45. That's not opinion, it's math. Young adults who keep fees low, avoid unnecessary debt, resist lifestyle pressure, invest consistently, don't just retire better, they retire earlier with options. The simple Mississippi friendly playbook, if I had to boil it down: one, don't confuse lifestyle upgrades with progress. Two, think in opportunity costs, not just prices. Three, keep insurance simple and investments separate. Four, avoid complexity you don't understand. Five, let time and compounding work. Don't interrupt them. You don't need to beat the market. You just need to avoid the common traps long enough. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some simple but incredibly important universal truths, starting with the law of supply and demand cannot be defied. There's a big difference between a theory and a law. A theory can be debated, a law just is. Gravity isn't political. You don't get to vote on it. You can ignore it, but it won't ignore you. The law of supply and demand works the exact same way. You don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with it. But if you fight it or don't understand it, you'll pay the price sooner or later. It doesn't matter whether you're a teacher, a farmer, a nurse, a business owner, or a kid just starting out. If you're going to earn money, spend money, borrow money, or vote on economic policy, you should understand how supply and demand actually work. Because just like gravity, this law never takes a day off. And the people who understand it early tend to land on their feet. Once you understand how the law of supply and demand works, you will be able to see through gimmicks and false narratives that some politicians and so called revolutionaries will try to sway you to believe. You know, sometimes I see people treat the word profit like it's something shameful, like it's a four-letter word you ain't supposed to say in polite company. Well, today I want to set the record straight. Profit is not a four-letter word. Let me say that again. Slow. Profit is not a four-letter word. It's the primary motive that makes every single transaction happen. Think about it. When you go to the store and buy a loaf of bread, the baker didn't wake up at 4 a.m. to fire up the ovens just out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because he expects to make a profit, enough to pay the rent, feed his family, maybe even expand the shop one day. You walk out with bread you wanted. He walks away with money he earned. Win-win. That's how the world actually turns. And here's the bigger picture. Without profit, there is no real incentive to innovate, to compete, or to improve outcomes. None. Look around at the things we take for granted: smartphones that fit in your pocket, medicine that keeps folks alive longer, cars that get 40 miles to the gallon instead of 10. Every one of those leaps came from someone or a whole bunch of someone chasing profit. They risk their time, their money, their sleep because they believe the reward would be worth it. Take profit off the table, and that fire goes out. People stop pushing the envelope, things stagnate. Now, some folks say, well, we can just cap profits or remove them altogether in certain industries, make everything nonprofit or heavily regulated. Sounds noble on paper, right? But here's the truth: when profit is removed or capped, costs don't disappear, they just get hidden or shifted. They show up as longer wait times, poorer quality, shortages, or they get passed on through taxes, higher prices somewhere else, or lower wages for the people actually doing the work. The money still has to come from somewhere. It doesn't vanish into thin air, it just gets disguised. I've seen it play out in real life, and history's full of examples. When you choke off the reward for doing things better, faster, or smarter, people stop trying, and we all end up poorer for it. So next time somebody rolls their eyes at the word profit, you can smile and say, hey, profit isn't the enemy, it's the engine. Without it, the whole train stops moving. We live in a capitalist society here in America, and let me tell you, that's a good thing, a mighty good thing. But every now and then you hear the chorus: capitalism's unfair, it only benefits the top 1% at the expense of everybody else. They point fingers, wave signs, and say we ought to switch to socialism or even communism, level the playing field, spread the wealth around, make things equal. Well, here's the plain truth I want you to carry with you: there will always be a top 1%, always. You can't erase that. Human nature, incentives, talent, hard work, luck, they all add up, and somebody's always going to rise to the top. The real question ain't whether there's a top 1%. It's who makes up that top 1% and how they got there. In a free market capitalist system like ours, the one that built the most prosperous, innovative nation in history, that top 1% is usually filled with folks who earned their way by providing goods and services people actually want and need. Think about it. The entrepreneur who starts a company making better tools, cheaper energy, life-saving medicine, or even just tastier coffee. They take risks, they innovate, they create jobs, they solve problems. Their wealth comes from voluntary trades. You buy what they offer because it improves your life. That's not exploitation. That's value creation. And we ought to admire that, not demonize it. Now flip the coin. Look at places that promise equality through socialism or communism. They still end up with a top 1%, but it's a different crowd. It's often the political class, the party insiders, the bureaucrats who control the levers of power. They don't build businesses that serve millions. They control the system itself. And guess what? Even in so-called communist China today, yep, the one that still flies the red flag and sings the praises of Marxism, there are billionaires, hundreds of them. As of late 2025, reports from Forbes and Huron show China has around 450 to over 1,000 billionaires, depending on the list, folks worth tens or even hundreds of billions from tech, beverages, EVS, and more. Names like Zhong Shanshan with his bottled water empire or Zhang Yiming from ByteDance sit at the very top. But make no mistake, in that system, staying rich or even getting rich often depends on staying in good graces with the party. The incentives shift from serving customers to navigating politics. The top 1% still exists, it's just selected by connections, not competition. So when somebody tells you capitalism is the problem because of inequality, smile and ask, would you rather the top 1% be inventors, builders, and risk takers who make life better for everybody, or political elites who hold the power and the purse strings? Capitalism ain't perfect. Nothing run by humans is. But it channels that natural drive for the top into something productive. It rewards creation over control. It lifts more boats than any other system ever tried. We should celebrate it, defend it, and keep improving it, not tear it down, chasing a fantasy of perfect equality that always leaves somebody on top anyway.
Do you really want to know why there are billionaires in China and why socialism really never works? Because there are positive people, innovative people, who will always find a way to profit. Anytime there's a demand that needs to be satisfied, they will find a way to satisfy that demand. And let's talk about innovative people. I want to talk about the tale of two cultures. The first culture has to do with this the shipwreck where these folks were stranded on an island. And look what they did. They built shelter and lived on this island fairly comfortably. They didn't just sit around and wait to die or wait for somebody to rescue them or live like Stone Age people. They let's take a look at what they did, and then let's compare that to the people on Sentinel Island who have lived on this island for thousands of years. We don't know how long they've been there, but they're still living like they're in the Stone Age. So they've probably been there since the Stone Age. But that goes to show you have some people who have been on this island for thousands and thousands of years, and they still have not built permanent shelter. They still live like they are in the Stone Age. But then you have these other people who immediately went to work to make their life more comfortable. That's the difference between innovative people and people who are not innovative. And that's precisely why socialism and communism doesn't work. Can you imagine if, let's say, these same people who were shipwrecked on part of Sentinel Island and they weren't killed by the Sentinelese, or however you say it, which is probably what would really happen. One would kill the other. But let's just say that didn't happen. And they built their buildings and worked real hard to make their life better. But then somebody came along and said, wait a minute, that's not fair. Those guys over there, those Sentinelese, or however you say their name, they're still living out in the open air and underneath a tree limb. They should have houses just like you. So we're going to take away some of your homes that you built and give it to those guys so everybody can be equal. Now, that's an extreme exaggeration of the differences between two cultures, but that is a good example of what happens under the theory of communism and socialism. You're taking from those who work and make an effort to improve their lives and giving it to those who have no ambition or innovation whatsoever and trying to make them equal. And of course, the people in the government who's deciding how to make everybody equal, they get rich and they become the top 1%. There you have it. That's why capitalism is better. Just so that I didn't get my facts straight, let's have Mila Grock compare the two cultures. Mila?
Imagine being dumped on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Sub-zero winds whipping your face. No food, no phone signal, nothing. That's exactly what happened to 5 guys aboard the Grafton back in 1864. Their ship slams into the Auckland Islands, hurricane style, hundreds of miles south of New Zealand. Wreckage, waves, done. Most folks would have frozen, starved, or lost their minds. Not these lads. First thing, they drag every scrap metal they can find, nails, bolts, chains, and set up a proper forge. Hammers, chisels, even needles, they make them. Then they hunt seals, tan the hides into boots and jackets warm enough to cheat winter. Salt, fat, fire, boom, homemade soap. And because hope tastes better than despair, they ferment berries and grains into something that foams, beer. Sunday mornings, chapel. They preached, prayed, even swapped languages, French, English, kept brains busy. No rescue ship ever showed. So what do? Rip their tiny lifeboat apart, rebuild it bigger, stronger, then row 280 miles through swells that could swallow cities, landed in Bluff, New Zealand, all 5 of them, grinning. Lesson? Give resourceful people half a chance, some wood, fire, guts, and they'll brew beer on an iceberg and sail home laughing. Now think about the North Sentinelese. Same planet, same ocean breeze, but a whole different story. They've been on that tiny island, Sentinel, for 60,000 years, give or take. Before wheels, before fire-tamed tools, before any word we'd call civilization. And guess what? They're still using palm-thatched huts. No forge, no nails, no beer. Rain comes, hut leaks. Wind blows, hut sways. That's it. See, that's the split I want to talk about. Not skin color, not luck, but culture. One bunch hits rock bottom wreck and says, "All right, boys, who brought the hammer?" The others wake up, stretch, patch a leaf. Done. It's not cruelty to point out. Innovation isn't automatic. You gotta prize tomorrow more than today. You gotta tinker, risk, share tricks, build bigger. The Grafton crew, they weren't supermen. They were ordinary sailors with an ordinary itch to do better. Sentinel folks, they're not lazy either. Their world just never asked for more. Difference isn't geography, it's mindset. One group traded despair for sweat, the other stayed snug in what worked. And look, 5 survived ice hell. Thousands still hide from boats. Pick your culture. I know which one I'd sail home in.
This next universal truth hits like a cold splash of water first thing in the morning. This next one's tough. Most people don't want to hear it, and even fewer want to accept it. But the sooner you wrap your head around it, the sooner you can stop spinning your wheels and start making real moves. Here it is. Poor people are the result of poor decisions. Now, before anybody gets their feathers ruffled, hear me out. I'm not talking about folks born into tough spots or hit with bad luck or dealing with things outside their control. Life throws curveballs at everybody. What I'm talking about is the long game. When you look at patterns over years, decades even, a whole lot of persistent poverty boils down to a string of poor decisions. Choices that feel easy in the moment, but compound like interest in the wrong direction. Some people think big, others think small. The big thinkers, they ask, how can I build something bigger? How can I learn more, risk a little, create value for others? They see opportunities where others see obstacles. They invest in themselves, time, skills, relationships, even when the payoff ain't immediate. They delay gratification because they know tomorrow's harvest comes from today's seeds. The small thinkers, they stay in the comfort zone. This job's steady enough. I can't afford to learn that. Why bother saving when it's just going to disappear? They chase quick fixes, lotteries, get-rich schemes, borrowing tomorrow's money for today's wants. They think small because small feels safe, but small stays small. And over time, those little choices stack up into a life that's harder than it needs to be. Look, nobody's saying it's easy. Poverty mindset creeps in quiet. It tells you there's never enough, that the system's rigged, that dreaming big is for other people. But here's the good news. Mindsets ain't permanent. They're habits. And habits can change. The minute you really decide to start thinking bigger, things shift. You start asking better questions. You read one more book, you save one more dollar, you say no to one more impulse buy, you network with one more person who challenges you. Small, better decisions compound the other way toward freedom, security, maybe even abundance. I've seen it in my own life, in folks around me, and stories from all over. And I've made plenty of bad decisions in my life, and I paid dearly for them. No one is immune. The difference between broke and staying broke and broke but climbing out ain't always starting capital. It's often just choosing different thoughts, different actions day after day. So if you're listening and this stings a little, good. Let it sting. Use that sting as fuel. Commit today to making one better decision than yesterday. Think bigger. Act bolder. The life you want is waiting on the other side of better choices. All right, folks, if that last truth about poor folks often ending up poor because of poor decisions landed a little heavy, buckle up. We're building right on it. This next universal truth ties it all together, and it's one I've lived long enough to see, proven over and over. The quality of your life has a direct correlation to your decision-making skills. Plain and simple. Bad decisions equals difficult life. Good decisions equals better life. Don't get me wrong. Life ain't a straight line. There are exceptions to every rule. A tornado levels your house through no fault of your own. A doctor misses something critical and your health takes a hit. You get born into circumstances that stack the deck against you from day one. Luck, timing, other people's choices, they all play a part. I ain't pretending otherwise. I've seen good people get hammered by things they couldn't control. But here's the part most folks miss. Even with those curveballs, the overall quality of your days, your peace, your security, your relationships, your sense of progress, that tracks pretty close to how well you make decisions when the moment comes. Over time, the pattern shows up clear as day. Think about it like compound interest, but for your whole life. One good decision, say saving a little extra instead of spending it, learning a skill when others are scrolling, walking away from a toxic situation, or choosing to forgive instead of harboring bitterness. Those stack up. They open doors, build resilience, create options, bad ones. They close doors, pile on stress, limit choices, make tomorrow harder. Studies back this up too. Folks who get better at weighing options, avoiding knee-jerk reactions, thinking long-term, they report higher life satisfaction, fewer regrets, even better health outcomes in many cases. It's not magic, it's math. Better choices lead to better results more often than not. So if you're sitting there thinking, Papa D, my life's tough right now, ask yourself, what decision can I make today that's a little better than yesterday? Maybe it's as simple as getting up 30 minutes earlier to plan, saying no to that impulse buy, reaching out to somebody who can teach you something, or just pausing before reacting in anger. Exceptions exist, sure, but don't let them become your excuse. The rule still holds strong enough to bet your future on it.
Chatty Patty, why don't you handle this next one? Power of positive thinking.
You know, the phrase the power of positive thinking gets tossed around so much that people sometimes dismiss it as a cliche. But here's the truth hiding underneath it. Positive thinking isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about believing that problems are solvable. When you truly believe there's a way forward, your mind starts looking for options instead of excuses. Your focus shifts from what's wrong to what's possible. That's why this line matters so much. Where there is a will, there's a way. Every breakthrough, every comeback started with someone refusing to accept this is just how it is. Positive thinking fuels effort. Effort creates momentum, and momentum opens doors that pessimism never even knocks on.
I would like to add something to that, Chatty Patty. You're spot on about how positive thinking isn't denial, it's determination in disguise. And that old saying you quoted, where there is a will, there is a way. It's not just a feel-good bumper sticker. It's a blueprint for how humans actually bend reality when they refuse to quit. I've seen it play out in real life over and over. Take the Grafton castaways we talked about earlier. 5 ordinary men shipwrecked on a frozen rock in the middle of nowhere. No food, no shelter, no rescue coming. Most would have folded, but they had the will to survive, to build, to get home. So they forged tools from scrap, tanned hides into clothes, brewed beer from whatever fermented, rebuilt a boat, and rowed 280 miles through killer seas. That wasn't luck. That was will turning impossible into done. Science backs this up too. Studies from places like Johns Hopkins and Harvard show optimistic people live longer, handle stress better, bounce back faster from setbacks, and even have stronger immune responses. Positive thinking literally rewires your brain, boosts serotonin for calm and focus, reduces pathological worry, ramps up resilience. It's not magic, it's mechanics. When your mind says there's a way, it starts scanning for solutions instead of roadblocks. Effort follows belief, momentum builds, and suddenly doors you never saw start opening. The flip side? When the will weakens, when someone buys into this is just how it is, the way closes. Not because the path vanished, but because they stopped looking for it. So yeah, positive thinking has real power. It's the spark that turns no way into find a way. Keep that will burning, folks, because history, science, and plain old human grit all prove the same thing. Where there's a will, there truly is a way. What do you think, listeners? Got a moment in your life where sheer will opened a door you thought was locked forever? Share it. Hit me on X at @Daryl_Breland. Those stories keep the fire going for all of us. Papa D, still in the corner, still believing. Y'all take care.
I think it's great that Mila Grok had to put in a plug for her boss, Elon Musk's company, X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm not even on Twitter that much, but maybe that's my correct X account. She knows more than I do, apparently, because I don't hardly ever use it. But back to our story here. I am a firm believer that we should be teaching our children in Mississippi and quite frankly all over the nation the benefits of capitalism, the fundamentals of economics, and not one single student should get past the 5th grade, in my opinion, without knowing and thoroughly understanding the law of supply and demand. And I don't mean just being able to read the definition. They need to understand how it functions. Because once you understand that, you can't believe in anything but capitalism. And you'll know how every single law that Washington passed, or anybody in the state passes that tries to control pricing. If it defies the law of supply and demand, it's not going to work very long anyway. The other thing, as you'll notice, as we got to toward the end there, we talked about decision making. I think we should start at a very early age in every single grade that our children are in school. We should have a course on the importance of decision making and how to make good decisions, how to evaluate risk versus reward, not just in investments, but in everyday life. When we get to my age, we all look back and think, how on earth did we survive those years? We made such bad decisions and somehow we survived. But some of these decisions that these young men, and primarily young men, make ruin somebody's life, and probably theirs, but could be others too, because they simply don't know how to make good decisions. They make such poor choices. They're not, obviously, a lot of these young men aren't getting those lessons at home. They're not being taught by their family how to make good decisions. Maybe their family doesn't know, but that's why they need to learn it in school. And the other thing on the power of positive thinking, one of the things I think our whole nation has gotten off track is they've gotten some of these narratives where our young people are taught in school that the deck is stacked against you because of what you were born in, either poor or in the wrong class, or you can't do it on your own. That is the exact opposite of what needs to be taught in school. Everyone needs to know and believe that they can do it. Nothing will hold them back except for themselves. And yeah, we all have obstacles. We all have challenges. That's part of life. But if you believe in yourself and you have the power of positive thinking, you will make a plan to overcome those obstacles no matter how great they are. One little short story, just so you won't think that your situation is unique. I found myself wiped out. My business went under. I lost everything I owned at age 50. Nobody would hire me. They thought I was overqualified, they would say. Might have been because they didn't think I had that many more years of hard work left in me. And I was literally homeless. If it hadn't been for the benevolence of a friend, I would have been out maybe under a bridge somewhere with one of those other folks you see with curled up under a blanket. Hopefully it wouldn't have been that bad, but I didn't have a home. It took every single penny I could muster working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my children's head while they were in school and college, high school and college. Couldn't have come at a worse time for me. I did what it took, and that's the key. Successful people do what others won't do. Well, I buckled down and got 3 jobs. I worked Monday through Friday. Really had 4 jobs. Had a day job during the week selling insurance, and tried to put together as an entrepreneur. Tried to put together a business that required a lot of work and a lot of capital that I didn't have and a lot of effort. But I also waited tables at night. I literally served people who used to work for me. You talk about humbling. That was pretty humbling. And and worked a weekend sales job, which I wasn't very good at when I wasn't waiting. Hey, bottom line, all I did was work for several years. But guess what? I bounced back. Life is good again. And that's the thing you need to know and understand, no matter where you are right now in life, and no matter how difficult things are. If you always maintain a positive outlook and never quit trying, no matter how difficult things are, you can be flat on your back and in a hole. You can't take off running from there. You have to find a way to get back on your feet first before you can start walking. And you got to start walking before you can start running, but you can do it. And that's what we need to be teaching in school at an early age. We need to instill that mentality that never give up, always believe in yourself. Don't ever depend on anybody else. Don't make yourself dependent, especially on the government. And believe in being independent. We teach those fundamentals at an early age and drive it home year after year after year, and make sure that our young people know that when someone tells them the opposite, when someone tells them they can't do it on their own, that the game is rigged, that for whatever reason that they can't do it, it's because maybe they're told because they're black, or because they're a female, or because they're weren't born into money, or whatever the excuse is. That's exactly what it is an excuse. Don't believe people when they tell you that.
When people tell you that you can't do it, they may have the best intentions. But remember, the highway to hell was paved with good intentions.
Believe it when people are telling you that you can do it. When people are trying to empower you and lift you up, those are the people you should listen to. Always. And that's what Mississippi needs to be teaching in our schools every day to all of our children. One more universal truth is there's an exception to every rule. So if there's anything in here you've heard, you think, that's, you can think of a situation where I was wrong. Just remember that there is an exception to every rule. I hope this has helped. Hope this has been beneficial. And let's stay around and stick around and subscribe and like this video. And please comment in the comment section below, because that really does help in the algorithms. And who knows, maybe one day I'll have more than 4 or 5 subscribers. and maybe this will actually do some people some good. Thank you so much. Till next time, this is Papa D.
Hey, if you're enjoying Grok and Papa D, smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and tell us in the comments, what should we talk about next?